With me in the studio now is Professor Asa Kasher. He's an Israeli philosopher who, among other things, was instrumental in formulating the IDF Code of Ethics. Thank you very much for coming. Now, it's hard to talk about ethics when you see children and women being slaughtered and kidnapped and all of that. How should IDF, how should Israel act facing this?
There are certain values that should be manifest when the IDF is doing its activities. There are certain international norms that should be kept, and there is a spirit of doing what you have to do, but do it very morally and carefully as much as you can.
How do you do this when civilians are being used as human shields, hospitals are being used as places for refuge for terrorists? How do you do this?
I'll give you the most interesting example, namely the claims concerning proportionality. I mean, when people in the media naively or politically see a picture of a dead boy, Palestinian boy in Gaza, they always take it to be against the rules. Israel has used excessive force and does not comply with the ideas of proportionality. This is almost always wrong. The idea of proportionality. There is a general idea in international law and in the moral views concerning war that you should minimize casualties, minimize damages. The grand way of doing it is to keep apart the combatants from the non-combatants. So, okay, here are the camps of the soldiers, here are the villages, the towns. Keep them apart. Don't attack the villages and the towns. And when the wars are done according to these rules, to this rule of distinction, then you minimize damage. However, our enemy doesn't think that they have to comply with the regulations, so they mix the two populations of the combatants and non-combatants. So when you attack a position of the combatants, you can be sure that it is surrounded by in a residential area by apartments of those who have nothing to do with terrorism or with the war. So your problem is how to minimize damages concerning this kind of people who are the neighbors of the terrorists. So we have. I don't like the phrase the most moral military force on earth, but I think that concerning this issue, we are the best. See what we do. First of all, we warn the population. We distributed 1.5 million leaflets. We made 6 million phone calls and SMS calls in order to tell the people, evacuate your places in the northern part of Gaza and move towards the south through humanitarian corridors where you're safe. There were even pictures of an Israeli tank guarding the people who are marching towards the south, guarding them against the Hezbollah, who would like to stop them from moving
towards
guarding them against the Hamas, who are interested in stopping them. Okay, first warnings. There is a whole battery of warnings. Perhaps the most original one and interesting one is what we call knock on the roof, which means that before we hit a building, because it is a site of terrorists, we send a missile on the top of it, but the missile is not explosive, but very noisy. And so it's the last warning, okay? So people then know that, okay, that's the end, almost the end of the story. If we don't evacuate the place now, then it might be too late. So we watch them and we know that many of them, and we can say 1 million of them, having left their places and moving elsewhere. In addition, when we attack by air a certain site, there is a whole procedure, a unit in the Air Force that tells the pilot or whoever is conducting that activity how to do it in a way that most probably guarantees hitting the terrorist, but minimizing the damage to one's neighbors. So we cannot help it. I mean, if a person acts as a terrorist from an apartment with his family or neighboring families, we cannot help it. It's a necessity. We must kill him because he constantly jeopardizes the life of people within Israel. We cannot capture him, so we must kill him. So the pictures of, of his neighbors, of his families, of his daughters and sons, his wife, dead, breaks my heart. I don't like to see it. It's the last thing I'd like to see within the framework of a war, but it's a necessity. It's justified by those proportionality considerations, which means what do I gain, what damage do I cause, and when proportionality tells me I can do it, I try again to minimize damages by warning, by removing, by doing all kinds of other things. Eventually, that's the minimum, the absolute minimum. So when people like the Prime Minister, some Prime Minister, some Secretary of the United Nations say that too many people die, it's the minimal amount. It's the minimal amount.
Okay. I have more questions for you.
Sure.
Please stay with me. We'll take a short break.
Sure.
And we'll be right back with more special coverage here on I-24 News. With Professor Asa Kasher, an Israeli philosopher who, among other things, was instrumental in formulating the IDF Code of Ethics. And I want to ask you, Professor Kasher, about some of the attitudes we hear in Israeli society. On one hand, people say, look what they did to us. They killed children, they raped women, they beheaded people. Why should we be the ethical ones? There's no room for ethics anymore.
It's not a game that you have two teams and they have to play according to the same rules. It's a clash between two civilizations. And the moment we start looking like the Hamas, then they won the war. We don't want to look like Hamas. We want to spare human life. We want to obey the rules of international law. We want to be compassionate towards civilians as much as possible. We don't want to be similar to them. However, this doesn't mean that we turn the other cheek. I mean, we'll fight and defend ourselves as necessary and legitimate.
Do you see the attitude saying, we hate you, Hamas, for causing us to act like we do?
It sounds sanctimonious, and I don't like it at all. We hate the Hamas because they killed our citizens. And our hatred is not what leads us. I mean, we have to, as a democracy, we have to defend our citizens, and we now defend them. And we defend them in a very radical manner, which means not only are they not going to attack us tomorrow, we would like them not to attack us ever. So we try to dismantle their existence as military and governmental entity in the Gaza Strip. We defend ourselves. We are not in the business of eye to eye. We are not in the business of hating, not in the business of revenge. We are in the business of defending ourselves in the right ways.
With all the things that you've mentioned before, warning civilians and trying not to kill bystanders and so on, is Israel being treated differently than other nations? There's a double standard there.
You see, some of the public, international public voices are Some of them are anti-Semitic, but some of them do not sound straightforward anti-Semitic, but they demand different standards from us. And we don't have to defend ourselves according to different standards. There are international standards. We observe them, and we would like others to comply with them. What we would like mostly is peace. I mean, we have not initiated that period of hostilities. We are interested in peaceful coexistence with our neighboring nations and states. They're not interested in us. You heard the Hamas leader, one of the Hamas leaders in Beirut saying, we failed this time, but we'll do it a second, and the third, and the fourth time. Okay, that's exactly the opposite of what we are interested in.
How much does the IDF invest in educating its soldiers about ethics and problems like they face now in Gaza?
Every soldier, every person in military uniform is being given lectures and running exercises concerning the values and norms of the IDF. So what is for an ordinary person just a remote story is for those people in military uniform something they've been taught, and they understand the roots of what they are being told how to act. I'll give you an example, which Israelis are well aware of, something like Kfar Qasim. So there is a certain village in Israel in 1956. Police forces did not act properly and killed the civilians, and every soldier knows what this means. Kfar Qasim is a name familiar to every young person in Israel. So they're being taught and instructed, and in every station of their military development, they hear about it in a higher level. So for many years, I taught in the military colleges. So every college spends time on explaining to the people who attend it, why are these the values of the IDF? For example, the IDF is the only military force in the world that has sanctity of human life among its values, and what we call purity of arms, which means the restraint of force among its values. No other military force on earth, although they are all democratic and they act, generally speaking, they act like the way we act, but they don't have these two values. So why are we so eager to have those two values among our values of the IDF? So everyone hears lectures and writes works and runs through exercises. So we invest very much in educating ethics to the military in military uniform.